Hey everyone, it is Clint. I want to have a little bit of fun with this video today because I had no idea what to make a video about. People ask me that sometimes. How do you keep thinking of content for videos? Don't you run out? Especially in such a strange niche as like culture and comics and politics combined. Well, generally I have plenty of stuff to talk about because there's a lot going on, but today it was a bit of a struggle. So we're gonna have a little bit of fun. I said a little while ago that I was going to make a review for JAWBREAKERS Lost Souls by Richard Meyer and John Malin and crew team, and I never did that review. And that's because I felt like it was just too late. So I got thinking today because I saw some news about Rotten Tomatoes and how Rotten Tomatoes is, like we already know, they're complete shill and they're politically motivated and all of the other. It's not even a surprise anymore. This happens everywhere. So I kind of got thinking, the one thing that Rotten Tomatoes had that comics didn't seem to have, or at least Rotten Tomatoes had it at one point, the intention of ripping apart and ribbing something, entertainment wise, that just wasn't good. So you could just give your honest opinion, full-throated hatred or endorsement for that matter, whatever you like. So I tried to think of what the comic book equivalent is. There is none, really, I'll be honest here. But Goodreads exists. Back when I was publishing novels, just regular novels, not graphic novels, I tried to make Goodreads a thing and I put my books on there and, really just tried to promote things and meet people, and it really wasn't great for that. But I got all sorts of reviews from people who read my books, and they weren't family and friends. They were just people, strangers that read my books, and they weren't putting reviews on Amazon. They were putting them here. JAWBREAKERS Lost Souls. I'm going to tell you my opinion on it, but first I'm going to get to some of this other stuff, and we're going to look at the funny ones. To be fair, he's got a 3.68 out of 5 stars. That's actually pretty good for Goodreads. It's nothing to be ashamed of. So that's overall. Now I could look at the good reviews, but what fun would that be? So we're going to look at your boy Zach is going to get a little bit of roasting. Corey says,
second worst comic I have ever read. The character Zashi is nothing of substance, just boobs, a damsel in distress, a Judas, and a damsel in distress again. The one black member of the team talks like a caricature of a stereotype from 1970s movie. The plot jumps all over the place. The art looks like something wanted to copy Rob Liefeld, but failed miserably. He had no concept of anatomy or panel layout. All in all, if you paid $25 for this, you were ripped off. Unluckily, the author sent me mine for free because even though I canceled my order for the book, he refunded my money and sent me a copy anyway, because I guess he wanted to torture me for having actually read this piece of trash comic.
That is harsh, but you have to say, even though this is a 1-star review, he gave you a refund and he gave you the book. I mean, customer service, I've given you 5 stars there. That's pretty great. Here's one from Evan.
Sewage.
And that's literally the whole review. 3-star review, he says very meh. This is an interesting review. Okay, we'll get into this one here. Mitchell says, I don't regret reading this because I want to support the indie comics scene, and I think the major companies have really let their quality slip. That being said, this just isn't that good. I don't really care about the politics and the controversy involved, and while you can clearly tell it's written by someone leaning far in one direction, that's really not where it falters. The story is choppy and at times hard to follow, and despite the huge scale of events happening, it all feels kind of inconsequential somehow. Lost Souls is much better in both story and art than others, but it shares the same issues. I hope the quality improves if there is more JAWBREAKERS to come, because even with the issues, the characters are interesting and I'd like to see more of them. That's actually not as bad of a review as you might think. It's some scathing comments, I guess, on the writing, primarily the plotting is what I'm getting. And when people say choppy story, usually for me that's plotting, also possibly scene changes, just looking at it from a writer's point of view. But this is actually quite a compliment in that the characters are interesting and Mitchell would like to see more. That's a massive compliment. That's the number one thing you can do as a writer, is make people care about your characters. So I'm kind of surprised there are actually not more reviews here written. There are a lot of, several ratings, 44 ratings. I'm trying to think if there's anywhere else where you can get this kind of feedback, because it's not sold on Amazon or anything. You're just not getting it. Now, I skipped over the good reviews just because, that's just not interesting. Let's face it. But there were a few things that were touched on in the negative reviews. Now, my comments on the book. First, people that say this is just terrible, it's the worst or the second worst book that they've ever read. I have to question that. Like, I've read a lot of books that I thought would be decent and they were terrible. There are a lot of bad comics out there. I certainly wouldn't lump that in here. Some of the comments that I'm getting about choppy scene changes, and this is again the writer coming out in me, I actually do agree with that a little bit, and I'll tell you why. This book suffers from the same problem that a lot of crowdfunded books run it up against, and that is pacing. You want to promise the world, you want to give somebody a story that has everything in it that they can be happy with and be satisfied, and it's going to hit all the right notes. The problem is, for something like this, it's actually quite expensive to pay for an entire production of a comic by yourself, and it's hard to know like what you're going to get funded and all this kind of stuff, and it also takes quite a bit of time. So I would say it is a little bit rushed. Now, this is something I really thought about with my own book, Downcast, because I suspected it would be a problem in that generally 48 pages to 60 pages, mine's 52 pages of story. It's not like a typical story arc. It's also not your typical one-shot comic. It's a bigger one-shot, essentially. And linking that to the next story, when you know that next story is not coming out for a year, it is very difficult. So this is actually an issue that I think will get better. It's almost like a new format. If you're writing a monthly book, you kind of get used to a certain flow and a certain pacing that makes sense that way. But if you're writing a book that's coming out once a year and you don't really have enough pages to do a full 4-issue, 6-issue, 8-issue story arc, then you're going to have to find a way to condense it or cut things out. All right, one more criticism and then I'm going to get to the things that I like. This character, Zashi. The problem is that she doesn't really make sense in the story. I mean, I know this is an unpopular opinion. When I heard a little bit about the history and how Zashi was added to the story, it was more of like a, fan service because people liked the drawing and all that, and then she was added into the story. You can kind of tell that that's the case. The love story that kind of springs out of that is really, really fast. And again, all of these problems are because of the fast pace. Having said that, there are actually quite a few things I liked and loved and really, really liked. I will say, first off, with the art, anybody that is criticizing it and saying that there's, serious problems with anatomy and stuff like that, I disagree. This art is really good. It's objectively good. It's stylized maybe in a way you don't like. Maybe you could say that. Personally, it's impressive. I can't knock it. Second, and I haven't heard anybody say this, Richard has a knack for writing dialogue. He gets the little comments from one character to another kind of right, and you get the feeling of how they interact with one another. As far as writing goes, this is actually not an easy thing to do. This is called voice. And this is just like if you're an artist, you'll hear artists say all the time, how do I perfect my art to the point where I have my own unique, recognizable style? Well, in writing, they call that voice. It's one of the most coveted things around. Every single publisher out there, if you submit for novels or for anything for that matter, the publisher is specifically going to look for the author's voice. If it's bland and it doesn't feel like it has voice, it's just telling a story and it doesn't have that, spice of life, people are not going to like it. Publishers aren't interested, and you're missing something really, really important. Richard, for the flaws I think that there were with the pacing of the story and just some of the scene changes, he has voice. You can see it in the writing. I can actually just picture the quirkiness of how he talks in his videos and stuff like that. And probably I'd think a little bit differently of it if I didn't watch his YouTube videos. But voice is huge. That is something that all writers want to have and they envy. Nobody that I know of has addressed this, but this is absolutely true. So what I hope for JAWBREAKERS God King, I will tell you the ultimate point here of my review is I did buy JAWBREAKERS God King. I backed it. I'm getting the second book. That means that ultimately I thought it was worth following the series. What I want to see is that same great voice that he has brought over into the next ones. I've already seen quite a bit of the art. The art looks fantastic. I never had a problem with it to start off with. But the one thing that I want to see perfected that I think that he could lead the way on is how do you tell a 48 to 60 page story and make it feel like a completed story, or make it feel like it's not rushed. So those are some of my thoughts on the book. Let me know what you think about, I don't know if you've read Jawbreakers God King, what your opinion is. Am I totally wrong? It's okay to tell me. You can roast me on my opinions. Whatever you do, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and I got to tell you this real quick. Downcast, we're getting closer, man. We've everything is out of the way. We are 70% finished. That is amazing. And we're right now on track. I'm really hoping to get this book out and start fulfillment sometime in October. So if you haven't bagged it yet, now is the time. And when you get it, you can write some reviews on Goodreads. That would be amazing. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.